I will call the October 14th, 2025 City Council meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. This meeting is being held in person at City Hall and as well as by video conference. The public may participate in this meeting in person here at City Hall or by pre-registering and joining through Zoom. All city council meetings are broadcast live and can be also accessed through the city website. Those are my canned things that I have to say each time. And now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Smith, will you lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Emmy, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Bell,
Here.
Councilor Bowman,
Here.
Councilor Engelbretson,
Here.
Lehman,
Here.
Myers,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
and Wells.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have agenda review. Any additions? We have a red folder here in front of us.
There's just the flyer, Mayor, for the sip and chat.
Okay.
Everybody has, and the CA report and a new copy of the updated look ahead.
All right, thank you very, very much. And this is not, sip and chat is not mandatory for counselors. And that's just something, if any of you can come, let me know. But it's just informal, and I'll be doing that twice in the next 2 weeks. And then we'll figure out after that. I don't know how many people will come, but it will be an opportunity, and I look forward to that. I like to meet with the public, and I like to hear what they have to say. We will put out an FAQ based on comments and input from the meetings. That's how that will go, and I intend to do some in the evening or even over a weekend. So I know that people work and they can't always get there. I do want to remind council that our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 12th, because Veterans Day is on Tuesday. City Hall will be closed, and so we'll move our meeting to that Wednesday.
Mayor, that's the next regular meeting, but we do have our work session.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank you for that. Yes, our next regular meeting, and we have a work session again Tuesday or 2 weeks from tonight. Yes.
Which date is that?
The
28th.
whatever's 2 weeks
28th.
tonight. 28. Yeah, 14 and 14 equals 28. So that sounds like a plan, and that will be a regular 6 o'clock start time here at City Hall. I did last week, 2 weeks ago, I'll tell you, time just seems to fly by. I was in Portland for the League of Oregon Cities conference and learned a lot, met a lot of people. It was a fantastic conference, had some really interesting keynote speakers. The first keynote speaker was a generationalist, I guess I would call him. He talked about the greatest generation. Actually, he didn't go back to the greatest generation. He just talked about the boomers and Generation X and the millennials and Gen Z, and I'm probably leaving somebody out, but
The
Anyway.
newest one is Alpha.
Oh, is it Alpha? Well, he didn't go there
Yeah.
either because they're not influential in the workforce. So we were really talking about the workforce. But it was very, very interesting. He was a very dynamic speaker. And our last keynote speaker was a futurist. And I thought, oh, I don't know that I'm going to like that. What is she going to talk about? Science fiction? But she didn't. And one of the really interesting facts that she put out, well, she put out a lot of them, but one of them was in 1949, China developed a 100-year plan. 1949, so right after the war. And they said, we're rebuilding and we're putting resources towards it. We don't have much now, but as we get more resources, and they're still working their 100-year plan. So they're scooting on by us in some ways. So that was really interesting. I also went to a very interesting, actually a couple speakers talked about AI and how we can use AI to do repetitive tasks. AI will never, at least in these speakers' minds, replace what a human being can do because AI cannot be empathetic. AI cannot quickly pivot between different viewpoints or different tasks. But those repetitive tasks, AI can excel at and can give us then time to do the things that only we can do. The speaker that I went to at that breakout session, AI had done his PowerPoint. I thought, oh, that would have saved me so many hours. And AI had done a slide presentation or a video presentation. You know, he just said, I want some video, some drone footage of flyovers of all of the different Oregon regions. And it was gorgeous. I mean, you had to look at it, and you had to make sure, you had to truth it, but it was really impressive. And it made me stop and think about AI in a little bit different light. Not an early adopter of things. Y'all thought I was, I'm not. But I thought, maybe I'll give that a try. See what I think, see if it works. But if it saves me some time or saves you some time, that can be a good thing. So that's it. And by the way, nowhere that I went in Portland was a war zone. I'm just putting that out there. People were walking dogs, running, jogging, pushing baby strollers. There was nothing happening. And we were not very far from this. Maybe it's different at different times. There was a lot of good stuff happening. Okay, we now have agenda review. Tammy, is there any proposed changes other than the? No,
There's not.
we do have public comment and we do have one member of our public signed up to speak. And that is Ms. Dompe. And could you state your name and your address,
Sure.
please?
My name is Megan Dompe and I am at, I guess, Coburg Main Street's at 9119 Willamette Street, as I'm here representing Coburg Main Street. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to talk to you guys about the Oregon Main Street Conference that was last week. It was hosted by the Albany Downtown Association and Oregon Parks and Rec. 250 leaders from around the state were present at the conference. I was lucky enough to be selected to speak at the conference on the topic of responsible tourism in rural communities. Specifically, the model for best practices we have implemented in partnership with the city of Coburg. The breakout session I led was 45 minutes. It was a crash course in the model that we have developed and continue to develop. There were 60 to 70 attendees at the breakout session, all leadership from across the state. It was followed by a really great Q&A session. They asked me about the Countryman. They asked about implementation of transient lodging tax and how we can directly and indirectly utilize tourism to benefit the community. After the session, I had several people come up and talk to me specifically about ways that we could potentially help them in their rural community. And since the conference, 2 state organizations have reached out about ways that they can help get this message out to more rural communities. So I wanted to come and talk to you guys about this a little bit. One, to thank you for your support, because now this is a little bit of a feather in the cap of Coburg. We're absolutely leading in this space in the state. And so it's really exciting. And we've got some collaborative efforts coming up with Oregon Parks, as well as Travel Oregon. And I will report more on that when that comes. But just wanted to say thank you and let you know that last week was great. And I have copies of the slides from the presentation that I'll leave if anybody wants to see them, as well as the additional resources I provided. So, thank you.
Well, I wanted to say thank you. I brought my copy of The Countryman. I hope you've all seen it. We did take some around to some of the restaurants. Took some down to Blue Valley and I took some down to the Merc the other day. I had the dog with me, so I didn't stay anywhere. I was walking, but the people at the Merc were absolutely thrilled. They say, "Oh, this is great!" And I've gotten wonderful response from anybody that hasn't seen this, and I love Terry Dawson's article in here. It was great. The origin story of the scarecrows.
Thank you very much for doing that.
You're very welcome. Okay, well, that's the public comment section, and thank you for representing Coburg. That's thrilling. Did you have AI work on your slide presentation for you?
AI?
Yeah.
No, I feel that. We probably would have been shorter.
I thought when he said that AI could do this PowerPoint, I went, I have spent hours doing PowerPoints.
At all.
Well, no, you would have to guide it and reread it but it can be a good starting point, I think.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you. We now have the consent agenda. And I'll remind you that counselors may remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion by requesting such action prior to consideration. So in the consent agenda, we have the minutes from September 9th, 2025, and the minutes from September 23rd, which was a work session. I remember correctly. And then we have the Planning Commissioner's appointment and a Historic Preservation Commission and Heritage Committee appointment. Are there any items in the consent agenda that should be removed for separate consideration by any member of the council? If not, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
Maribel, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented, including the appointments to the Planning Commission and Heritage Committee.
Thank you. We have a motion by Counselor Bowman. Do I have a second?
Okay.
We have a second by Counselor Wells. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries 6-0 or unanimously. With the approval of the consent agenda, the April 8th City Council meetings have been approved. The council consented to the mayor appointing 2 budget committee members. No, I'm sorry. 2 Planning Committee members, that's Mr. Jerry Bainey and Mr. William Wood. And to the appointment to the Heritage Committee is Mr. James Bell. Thank you for that. Keep turning pages here, I apologize. Okay, moving on, we don't have any contracts tonight. Council action items. We have the ordinances and resolutions for council action. And this is the public hearing and first reading. And I will now open the public hearing at 6:17 and hold the first reading on ordinance A 200-N and ordinance amending articles 7. Oh, you're testing me on my 7, 8, 10, 21, and 25 of the Coburg zoning code to address state of Oregon climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking and other general housekeeping amendments. We have a staff report from Mr. Hanks.
Yes, I'll be brief and turn it over to Megan Winter, our planning director. This item is, as the mayor said, a first reading of an ordinance for some land use code changes that were generated from state legislation a while back, and it makes its way down to the local level. We provided a kind of a topic overview and a heads up on this topic at the work session on September 23rd. Hopefully gave some context. I think we had a good council discussion about some of the parking components here. So this is the formal process to amend and adopt these recommended code changes from the Planning Commission. And I will turn it over to Megan to step everyone through it as deeply as as you would like to go.
And I hope everyone had a chance to read the code as it stands. And I certainly appreciated the changes that were highlighted in there.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, just to give a little background, the climate friendly and equitable communities rulemaking may sound familiar to some of you. This was established with a governor's order in 2022 with the goals to reduce climate pollution, to provide more transportation and housing options, and also to promote more equitable land use outcomes. And so there have been several different components of the climate friendly and equitable community rulemaking, which for short you'll hear called CFEC for short. For those of you that do a little bit of the regional transportation, we did recently complete the preferred scenario plan, which was conducted with our regional partners as well as a consultant parametrics. So that was one component of CFEC. We are now doing our code amendments, which are twofold. We'll be looking at some parking reform changes and also some walkable design standards. And then another component of CFEC will be our local TSP, our transportation system plan, which will be a few years down the road in the future. So we've kind of completed one in the regional sense. Now we're taking off the first of our local requirements in the code amendments. So DLCD has provided a lot of support towards this work. The parking reform changes were suggested by their staff. DLCD's staff provided that proposed language. And for the walkable design standards, DLCD contracted with LCOG to conduct a code audit project. So there was a walkable model code developed by DLCD for small cities. And our consultant from LCOG compared our existing local zoning regulations to the model code as part of the walkable design standards. Coburg actually really scored very, very well in that audit type scenario. A lot of the work and the requirements that are being put out as part of this rulemaking are very much in line with what Coburg is already doing in really creating compact development and a pedestrian friendly built environment. So, like I said, tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the zoning code amendments, which are kind of twofold. There's the parking reform, which essentially eliminates parking requirements, parking minimums with a few exceptions. And then we'll talk about some walkable design standards. I know that there were two different versions of the proposed changes provided in your packet, one being the entirety of the zoning code document in legislative format, the other being this shortened version of a matrix, which I'm thinking we can run through each individual change this evening. It's also on the screen, but what's on the screen is identical to what is in your packet.
Could you tell us which page that is on? In packets.
Yes, it is on page.
Still going, still going.
I should have.
Yeah.
Starts on page, looks like 300.
Yeah, this was an impressive pack.
Land use codes typically make up about by volume about half of a community's total municipal code. Land use codes are usually big.
There's no exception.
No exception, yeah.
I would say for the benefit of my colleagues and just for the record for the public who wants to know, the actual Oregon administrative rule is 660 division 12. So if anybody wants to do some more research and go down the rabbit hole like I did, 660 12 is the transportation.
Yes, that is the transportation planning.
Yeah. So just in case anybody wants to go there, I don't recommend it.
Yes, and then even more numbers after
Yeah.
that, 660, 12, and then a couple more,
Yeah.
depending on what you're looking at. Yes.
Okay. Oh, everybody.
Okay, it looks like everybody is tracking along. Okay, so we're gonna start with the first district, which is Article 7, and that is our traditional residential district. The first column here lays out the existing language in italics. And then in the second, or I guess that's the third column over, is the proposed amendments. And those changes are shown, additions are shown in bold or deletions are in strikeout. So the very first one is adding the ability for a duplex, which would be 2 units to share a single driveway. There's currently a provision in the code that each unit must have its own driveway and that driveways cannot be shared. So this would be an exception for the existing exception of the ADU plus an exception for a duplex. The next change speaks to minimum setback requirements for the front yard setback. The existing language is a minimum of a 15-foot setback. This is one of the items that Planning Commission had a pretty robust discussion about. And settled ultimately felt most comfortable with providing a range so that there is some flexibility to allow for a minimum of 10 feet with a maximum of 20, also providing an exception for the front porch to count towards that setback should the developer choose. So it kind of almost provides, with the requirement of a 5-foot porch, almost provides another 5 bit of flexibility. So instead of selecting just a maximum, which is what the model code suggested, Planning Commission recommended providing a range for the front yard setback change.
Excuse me, Megan, I had a question on the 20-foot
Do you
max.
want us to
Oh,
hold
that's
questions to the end or as?
Questions as we go is
Okay.
fine. Mhm.
The 20-foot maximum, so that would be a front yard,
Correct,
not be more than 20 feet
correct,
on a city lot.
correct.
For new development.
For new development, yes. Any new dwellings.
I'm kind of curious why they put a maximum on the front yard. If it's a, like a long shoebox lot.
Yeah, so there are a couple different ideas behind that. There are some efficiency components in terms of utilities and that type of thing. It also promotes a little more compact development and a higher density by using more of that land. Whereas, theoretically, if it was this big of a lot, maybe there could be multiple lots there if you're bringing all of the buildings closer up front. So you're able to use more land of the lot itself. And ultimately, I think one of the best selling points for that is what it does for the built environment and talking about eyes on the streets. And our existing regulations promote front porches heavily because it creates this sense of knowing your neighbor and knowing what's going on, and things just feel very interactive from a pedestrian realm. So bringing those buildings close to the property line helps to build that built environment that is more comforting as a landscape. One other thing I forgot to mention when we got started was the reason that Coburg is required to make these changes is because of the city's inclusion in the Central Lane Metropolitan Planning Organization. And so a lot of these amendments are geared towards more urbanized settings. So they do still apply, and we can think about how to make them work for Coburg, but some of them, like the minimum setback, I think when you apply it to a little more urban setting or a bigger city, you could see how it would make a little more substantial change there.
Councilor Lehman?
So if we're to be required to approve this in order to be part of that consortium, if there's individual changes, does that have to be approved by the consortium?
So we are required to do this because we are part of the MPO, but it doesn't, I don't think it affects our eligibility into the.
We can make changes.
We can, there are some things that we could maybe make a small amount of changes on. There are some things that we cannot make changes.
And then on the question about the lot size, what if there's a double lot? Is it still gonna be limited to the 20 feet setback requirement?
Do you mean two separate lots?
If somebody had
One large lot?
12,000 square feet, for example. would
Yes,
still
if
have
they
to
had
have-
if they were to propose to build a new dwelling in the residential district, yes, it could be a maximum setback of 20 feet.
If it's a 12,000 square foot lot. You would have
Correct.
to have,
And as Megan was saying, it's a lot of, it really is designing for efficient use of land over the long haul. So that description of having somebody build one structure in the middle can lock that up for 50 years, where if it's loaded, more properly to an compact urban forum, another unit could be facing on a double lot. If there's two frontages, there's two units each facing a different streetscape, and we have two units, two housing units on that property instead of one. So it really is designed, there is some urban components to it, but there really is just smart, efficient, use of land. And it really does indirectly get to the longer term conversation that we'll have about urban growth boundaries, and the buildable lands inventory, which we'll have a little talk later in the evening about.
Could also allow for ADUs and ADU in behind
Right.
too. If
Any sort of additional units, right?
Yes.
Yeah, whether it's a lot split or an ADU or a duplex,
Higher use of
density.
the land.
Yeah.
so under definitions, is an ADU considered a single family unit. I didn't see individual references to ADUs on that.
In terms of a second
Well, there's
unit,
definitions here of single family unit, duplexes, et cetera. I didn't see anything for ADUs. Is that just handled out separately? In terms of all these requirements that apply to ADUs as well?
ADUs do need to meet setback standards. So if there were one in the rear or the side yard, it would need to meet those setbacks.
we're talking about definition of the zone, because ADUs can be in a single family zone. So that's a weird, I mean, calling single family and multifamily zones, but there is a definition of what an accessory dwelling unit is. And it's accessory to the primary dwelling in a residential zone. It typically wouldn't have a front setback component because it's usually not, it could be in front of if there was a building built way in the back and somebody wanted to build their ADU in front of, then this standard would apply to that. It's not typically done that way. It's usually, you see it in the reverse, but it could be where that becomes the front facing, and then that would be the streetscape piece and have the porch and same principles that Megan described.
Okay, the next one here is just strike out on the word required for a parking reference. And the one following that is just a renumbering, grammatical correction. The next several are strikeouts regarding required parking. And then the parking spaces required table is struck out and replaced with parking maximums for the central business district only. The calculations for parking are then struck, as well as the exceptions and reductions to off-street parking. The facilities for parking have been replaced with other parking requirements. It talks to preferences for carpool and vanpool parking for new commercial or industrial parking lots with more than 50 parking spaces. It also talks about providing those carpool spaces closer to entrances and bicycle amenities. It also provides some provisions for joint use parking, so shared parking agreements between adjacent property owners. Following that is some provisions for the redevelopment of off-street parking that allows for off-street parking that was required from a previous land use approval to be converted into a different use, primarily pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure or transit, such as a bus stop. And another one is adding the requirement for electric vehicle conduit to be installed in new parking lots for multifamily development and also for commercial development. The one following that at the top of page 8, I'm not sure the page in the packet.
307.
307. This gets into connectivity of pedestrian systems into large parking lots. Um, It also talks about providing some distinction of where that pedestrian walkway is through the parking lot. So I tend to think of Costco where you're not really quite sure how to get into the building or walk around that parking lot, but this is calling out maybe a different elevation or a different type of marking for that parking lot. The next set of changes take place in Article 8. Article 8 is supplemental district regulations, which provide a variety of regulations that apply to various types of development, not just specific to a zoning district itself. Here, the block length maximum has changed from 600 to 500 feet. And if a proposed block length exceeds 350 feet, that a mid-block access way is provided. The next one is regarding alleys and that in residential districts, blocks should include alleys to allow the use of rear-loaded garages and accessory dwelling units and to provide access for utility and garbage services when feasible. We then jump back into pedestrian connectivity in commercial and industrial zones. So talking about having a continuous route that connects to building entrances, pedestrian facilities, transit stops, as well as accessible parking spaces. One addition that pedestrian entrances for uses open to the public are to remain open during business hours.
Just back to the alleys, I think at the planning commission, there was some discussion about, are there certain requirements of the alleys that are outlined or specified in terms of improvement or width or lighting or those kinds of things?
For a brand new alley, there would be street standards that would need to be followed for the
Including
construction of an alley.
paving?
For a new alley, I think it would be paving. Mhm.
Yeah, so the existing street standards that have been previously adopted would guide all of the specifications and requirements for alleys. And when we're talking about collector streets, neighborhood streets, alleys are another functional classification that have cross-section standard and paving widths and all of that. The right-of-way dedication and the size of those kind of depends on what uses and the trip counts that are feeding those, or that are serving those alleys. But generally, there's a typical street standard that we already have in our code.
I think a good example might be Hayden Homes.
Yes.
Yes,
Covered
and they
crossing. Yes, I was thinking that.
Yes, they access the garage through that alley. You can, if next time you walk by, you might be able to notice kind of the difference in one side of the street that has that rear facing garage and one that's different. So it's actually a pretty striking example over in that neighborhood. I also think about future development on our last piece of residential vacant land here where mixed use is allowed on that specific location of town. And so if something were to be fronting Willamette or Van Dyne, I guess it is coming up around that corner, I can see how the use of an alley would come into play there as well. And that also speaks, I think, to Coburg's historic architectural character, and that is typically how a lot of homes were built without such an autofocus back in the day.
You have someplace to put your horse.
Someplace to put your horse, got hitch them up, yep. Okay. So the next applies to mixed use development. And this similarly to the commercial and industrial standards speaks to pedestrian facilities connecting to parking, accessible parking, bicycle parking, and recreational opportunities. The next one is a pretty simple addition to our drive-through standards that queuing areas or the drive-through line will not block certain things. One of those being a parking stall, that just adding that parking stall there. And then adding some standards for pedestrian service areas as a requirement of new drive-through development. Drive-throughs are already well restricted within the central business district, but particularly in the highway commercial district and the light industrial district, these would apply as well. I think a good example of that is even McDonald's, where you're able to kind of walk in and have an interface even as a pedestrian. The next one is really just cleaning up a table that talks about different review procedures. So just kind of consolidating those and making sure that they were named appropriately. Followed by some application requirements. The zoning code currently requires that applicants for a type 3 application submit their own pre-addressed self-stamped envelopes for the mailing notice, which is not something I that has been done since my time here, and I think is just more efficient and city's responsibility to mail. So just kind of bringing that up to current practice, making some corrections about map references. And then the final section is adding some definitions. I can read through those individually if you like. Otherwise, I'm just going to name the items that they are for. We have one for accessible, one for access way. We have a new definition of an alley, a definition of block length, definition of a drive-through facility, main entrance, pedestrian facility, a stacking lane, and a walkway. And a lot of those are connected to the walkable design standards, just ensuring that we have a connection to our requirement and specifically what that requirement means. So that's the proposed amendments.
So these apply primarily to new construction. Do any of them apply to remodeling or expansions of existing structures?
I think there is a threshold for a certain percentage of the footprint that has to be altered, but there are exceptions for historic structures.
So any anything that meets that threshold that would have to go through a land use action would be subject, just as they would to current new code, they would be subject to these as well. So if it's truly a residential, a home that's just being remodeled, it doesn't trigger a land use action anyway. It doesn't trigger the land use code. It wouldn't be subject to this, but this becomes applicable to anybody that crosses into that definitional threshold of needing a land use approval. But I think the vast majority of the practical impacts would be with new development.
Any other questions for staff?
Mayor, if I might add real quick, this has been a whole lot of work. I know Megan's been in a lot of Zooms and a lot of meetings, and it's a lot of coordination between, with state and the region, and a lot of work. So we are really glad to get it here in front of you all. The cool thing, to summarize what Megan said, is that Coburg's code was already in great alignment with CFEC rules and requirements, which I think is a feather in our cap. I think that's a good thing. It still meant that we had to go through all of the same stuff. The changes to other communities are quite a bit more substantial than the changes that we're seeing here to our land use code. But just wanted to point out, it's been a lot of work, and lot of great work from Megan to get us to this spot. And I think it's quality stuff that'll really do us well for development moving forward here.
As you pointed out previously, those of us that sit on the transportation committees have heard about CFAC for a long time, and there has been a huge amount of work to get this rolling down the road, so to speak. Any other questions for staff? Comments? We have anyone signed up to provide testimony? We do not. If there are no further comments, I will close the public meeting at 6:45. My watch. 6:46. Sorry about that. Okay. The second reading will be at the city council meeting on November 12th. And we have no amendments, so we're good with the first reading. Don't have any contracts tonight.
We need to approve the first reading of the ordinance, I thought.
You're right.
Okay, good. Just checking.
We will approve that on the second reading.
Alrighty.
Okay. We have no contracts tonight. Lost my main piece. Okay, any other council action items? And now we're on to administrative informational reports. And I will turn that over to Mr. Hanks. Provide the staff
Okay,
reports.
thank you. Couple memos in your packet of things to come. One of the building code item is actually one that we were originally intending to actually bring forward a dangerous building codes ordinance to adopt the dangerous building codes. As we dug further into that, there was more work to be done than just simply adopt that code. So the memo kind of speaks to what we're working to do. And I'll just back up and say that the city operates a building program that's complementary, to the land use. The land use is a local code. We just went through that. When people go through a land use process or any sort of development process, there's the land use piece, and then there's the building code part and the building review and inspections during construction. Our building program is done. It has to be approved by the state. We have a building department operating plan, and every 4 years that needs to be updated. So we are close to the 4-year mark where we have to update and resubmit that. I don't think we have any significant changes, but it references a bunch of OARs and ORSs, and it always requires you to look at what has changed in those 4 years. Additionally, that document guides kind of how we run the program and how we and then what codes we use to actually administer our building program. And similarly to the operating plan, building codes change from year to year or cycle to cycle, and we are in need of updating our ordinance that adopted prior codes. So we need to go through, and there are 4 that are, even though they're kind of mandatory codes, every local jurisdiction has to adopt them. And so we need to update our kind of our library of codes. So our ordinances are up to date for what codes we have for the structural specialty code, the plumbing code, the electrical code, and the mechanical code. The dangerous building codes is one that arose as it's an optional code. It isn't required to be, it's not adopted in every city in the state. Many cities do. It provides for some explicit definitions of what is a dangerous building, and it provides some abatement opportunities that are done through the building official, rather than having to have a city come up with a local nuisance code that kind of, makes definitions on the fly for what's dangerous, what's not. It's really much more of an objective standard, and it allows our building official, rather than our own planning staff, administration, police department, to try and work their way through an abatement process, and instead gives a code professional some authority to do that, including actually boarding up and having the property posted and actually abated. We have a couple properties that may benefit from that, and it's just a good tool to have. So that is we're kind of wrapping that now into the whole thing of updating the building operating plan, updating our mandatory codes, making sure by reference that we have those current codes adopted by ordinance, presenting you for adoption a dangerous building code. And then along with that goes with our operating plan as well, is building department fees or building permit fees. And we talked a little bit about that one prior. Those are kind of run a little bit separate than the regular administrative fees set that we have. We have the land use fees, and then we have the rest of our administrative fees. The building code or building permit fees have a state kind of a noticing process that go with them first before they come to a city council. It allows the building trades to have notice that these are happening and a chance to comment on them. And those haven't been updated in a number of years. So the objective there is to compare the building code or building permit fees to the rest of the region, which the general contracting and development community operates in 4, 5, 6, 8 jurisdictions in the region, typically from week to week. So it's pretty common. These are pretty typical fees. No one community is very wildly different than another for them, but we're a little behind. And the goal with the in aggregate, what we're wanting to do is have our building department be self-sufficient, at least to have our revenues generally equal on an annualized basis to our contract that we have to operate the program is an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Cottage Grove. So that's the impetus for the fee review and updating the fees, is to ensure that the general fund isn't unduly subsidizing the building development and permit program. Those are actually by law. Some communities actually have them as a separate enterprise fund. They're required to be self-sufficient. So we really do have a kind of a mandate to ensure that the permit fees that we're charging applicants in aggregate on a year over year, different years have different things, but on an annualized long-term basis, pay for the cost of the program.
Are those sort of regulated by the state? Is that what I heard you
They're
say?
definitely influenced by the state and the methodology, of like electrical. There's a base fee, and then there's per branch circuit. There's the structure of how they're done, and the categorization of them are set by the state and by the codes. The exact numbers, the dollar amounts that each community charges vary, but they have to be justified. So you can't raise them. You can't raise them to the point where you're making a profit in your building, in your building program. So that's the point of the state noticing requirement, is to give the construction trade industry a chance to look at, is somebody going way beyond what it costs to actually provide plan review services, inspection services, and then administrative oversight of the program. So it's pretty, it's almost cookie cutter. I mean, it's very straightforward. There's a valuation table for structural. So the amounts are based on this sliding scale, based on the valuation of the structure that's being submitted for plan review. And plan reviews are 65% of the main permit fee. So all of that kind of stuff is already built. We're just looking to update our fees to make sure that it's at least covering the cost of our intergovernmental agreement. That isn't our total building cost. We do have some administrative oversight. Megan manages that program along with the building program. But for the most part, the vast majority of our building program fees or expenses are embedded in that IGA with Cottage Grove. So we want to have those match up. So that's on its way. So that the memo is just an explanation that we instead of kind of piecemealing and just bringing you the dangerous building code and then bringing you back the operating plan later and bringing you back the fees later, we're going to slow that train down a little bit, put them all together and bring you a full comprehensive package for our building program.
Makes perfect sense.
I think you answered my question. So there are fines or fees that are levied against the owner of a building that's been deemed to be a dangerous.
There can be, yes.
Okay.
Yep, we can set those fees. Yep. Typically based on kind of a number of hours and an hourly cost of what an inspector costs, a fully loaded inspection cost. That's
In terms of if there's nothing done for weeks or months to correct it, is there continuing fines?
can be, yes, absolutely. Uh-huh.
We do not have a dangerous building code at this point.
We don't. We have some nuisance codes that would allow, we have some tools. Those aren't as, like I said, aren't as objective and probably not as straightforward to just do as Councilor Lehman said. You step forward and you say, okay, you have 30 days to do this. You're fined this amount, and it's and there's an appeals process embedded in the reference in the dangerous building code. It's really an all-encompassing thing for just that thing, not for all nuisances around, but for things that meet. There's 28 different elements that make a building dangerous, and so a building official would have to say this building, is dangerous by virtue of number 3, number 18, number 20, and you have X number of days to rectify. And in the meantime, you can require them to board it up or fence it or do something like that.
It can lead to condemnation.
Condemning, well, it can. Yes, I mean, the abatement can end up having a lien on the property, and then that could, it's several steps away, but ultimately, yes. Yep. Yeah, it's a tool to help in that process. That the most extreme case, would be that resolution. Absolutely. So that we're actually looking, I just had some conversation Megan and I did with Cottage Grove today. They're providing us some information and some helpful assistance. There's some other code language that used to be in the structural code that now was dropped, which is stop work orders. So having legal authority to issue a stop work order used to be, if you adopted the 2021 Oregon State Structural Code, you automatically the stop work order language came with that. That dropped out in 2022. So now cities have to go and separately, when they adopt the state structural code, they also have to then embed their own section that gives the building official authority to issue a stop work order. And that's really for when things get gnarly and get into a legal proceeding. Their legal counsel is going to look at our codes and say, you actually don't have the legal authority to do that, even though it's practical. We've historically done it. If we have this gap and that code lapsed and we don't have language of our own, they would win because we don't have legal authority to issue a stop work order, and then we could, legal liability on our side. So it's to close those up. And there's some other things about retaining walls that used to be in. There's a bunch of technical things, and there's a package that a lot of cities use. So we're looking to our partner communities to see what packages they've put together to address some of these drop-offs that were historically in the building codes.
Any other questions or comments? We'll look forward to that package coming back.
All right. Yeah. Exciting. It's if you thought Megan stuff was in the weeds, that building stuff is really in the weeds. Yeah, it really is. But it's important when you need those tools, you really need those tools to be right. So it'll be good to get it buttoned back up. The next item is, I think it's next. Flip. Yep, storm drain. Next in the packet, storm drain master plan, stormwater master plan. Some people call it storm drain. I think it's more appropriate what we've got it titled stormwater master plan. Retrained myself. I included in the packet just the executive summary, just to give you a flavoring. It's a document that's probably as large as the land use code amendments that we looked at earlier. So the executive summary gives you a flavor of what is included. It's our last stormwater master plan was 1999. So it's not massively overdue, but that's a little long to have updates. But our stormwater master facility, our facilities probably they've changed since 99, but not massively, maybe not as much as in other communities. So it's really appropriate, good timing to do this master plan. And we'll dig into this at a future meeting on the look ahead. It's on the look ahead for, I believe, November, where we'll actually ask for your adoption on this. Just wanting to put it in front of you so you know it's there and you know it's coming. And it's also likewise been a lot of work. It's been ongoing since I got here. It's been kind of a back burner when we're hot and heavy on projects. We've had branch, slow down and just kind of hold. We're under no particular regulatory deadline to get it adopted. It does interface with our TMDL work. So you'll see this more and more when we give our annual total maximum daily load annual reports. It goes to that activity matrix. This will strengthen that. It eventually, all cities will eventually get, we've talked about more and more regulatory coming down the line. Stormwater is clearly one that the larger cities have already had a lot of regulatory implications. So we're not yet in some of the same regulatory status, but we will soon be. And we have a lot more storm drain systems that we're developing for good reason, and they're important to have identified. That was part of the challenge of this, was to figure out where they are and where they're actually going. With really old systems, it's not always easy to tell. But that's coming soon, and that will then lead to, just a spoiler alert, it's I think in the executive summary, but that ultimately leads to needing to figure out how to fund the improvements that are called out here, which is of course our reoccurring theme. A stormwater fee on utility bill is the standard method to actually fund the storm drain improvements that you need. When we do our street improvements now, the ODOT small city allotment grant funding that we get excludes storm drain work. It really is roadway only. So while they're very integrated, streets and storm drains, they are different things. They're different systems, and they have different regulatory requirements. So most communities, especially the ones that have already been regulated, actually create a separate fund, and pull that out from the street fund and make a storm drain fund, where then that revenue, that whatever revenue stream you dedicate to storm drains, goes into that fund separately from streets. And also that is the fifth SDC. We currently have in place 4 of the 5 allowed SDCs by state law. Storm drain SDC is the 5th. So that would be an implementing action called out in this master plan, as well as the creation of an operating and maintenance revenue stream and a systems development fee for the growth component to the system.
Not as easy as it used to be, is it?
Lots of guiding documents. Guidance whether we want it or not.
The maps, aerial maps were really helpful.
Yeah, there's a lot of inventory work, and we actually got some GIS layers as well. And DeBeat, actually, when he was here doing some of the TMDL work, was very helpful in some of the background data collection for this stormwater master plan as well.
This helps to visualize what some of the issues are.
All right. No questions on that one. The next one is the Police Department Quarterly Report. Sergeant Miller is here with us to answer any questions. This is just to kick this one off. Dan and the team have been, working on kind of building out these quarterly reports we've been talking about, what kind of material is useful and relevant to council and the community. So hopefully, give some constructive feedback either now or email us and say, is this hitting the mark, or there's some interesting, some things that you're interested about that we aren't covering. But we're really trying to build out, the monthly stuff in the city administration report has really that typical rundown of just nuts to bolts, what happened in that month, all the different kinds of calls that came in, kind of shows the breadth. The quarterly reports are hopefully there to give a little highlight on some of the depth. We have breadth and depth in all of our departments and all of what we do. So hopefully this gives a little peek into the depth of what's going on there. And then some of the longer trending stats. The monthly report is, I think, really interesting and really useful, but it doesn't give you a really ability to trend kind of service levels and volumes over a longer period of time. So that's what the quarterly reports are intending to do. And any questions? Dan has the answers.
If not, I'll get them for you.
Thank you, Sergeant Miller. We're glad you're here.
For having me.
I'll point out real quick, the first one, the traffic safety grant, Dan was instrumental in getting that. That's we've had it for a number of years, and it's another one of those easier said than done things. All grants require a lot of work, and but this is a really good one that accomplishes a lot of pedestrian safety work, kind of things that go back to our transportation safety ad hoc committee, those kind of things that can really help focus some of our patrol and enforcement work. More kudos from the school. There's a lot of work that the PD team does at the school, and it's great stuff.
Mayor Bell, I have a
Yes.
suggestion. In looking at page 337 of this with the graph and then the little list above, I continue to feel like the residents of our city are not aware of not just the police activity, but what happens in our city without names, without, not a gossip circuit. But I really think this page would be beneficial for community information to go into the Countryman, to be just general information, because so often I hear the comment, nothing ever happens in Coburg. And I think that you don't want to alarm the community, but I think this is just a real common sense graph that would help educate people, not just about what law enforcement does, but about things that do happen in the community. And I just feel like it's always in the administrator's report, but if I wasn't on council or at council, it's not something that I would have eyes on unless I specifically sought it out. So I think the Countryman and maybe one other way of getting this information to our public is important.
I have previously generalized the statistics and put them in the mayor's notes. I didn't get any feedback, so I don't know if people appreciated it or not, or if they even saw it. That's always the dilemma. But I think that's certainly something that we can continue to work on.
Yeah, a couple things real quick is one of the reasons we're doing the quarterly report separate from the page that's embedded in the city administration report. We do post the city administration report separately out at social media, and it's also separately on the city website, outside of the packet. And then we do give it to all committees. So every committee gets the city administration report. The quarterly reports we're also posting out on the police department's Facebook page as its own document. So there's another avenue for that. And then it's also on the police department's website as its own separate document. And so the goal next is rolling this into an annual report and then having a few extra things in there that that the chief and Dan and I have been working on. Basically, the fourth quarter would be the annual report. So there's 3 quarterlies and then an annual. So you know, I definitely would be interested, if not now, another time, about whether this would be valuable content to be in the Countryman or not. That, you know, there's also, I would be interested in an offline conversation with the director of the of Cover Main Street, who puts out that publication. That is a tourism and marketing publication as well. It'd be an interesting conversation. I'm not saying that's not a good idea. I just think that needs, you know, we'd want to think that through about what you know, is that the right channel, given what we're doing in the other channels already that I just described. But I get the intention and the desire to say, here's the reality of what's going on, because it is busy, you know, and that monthly gives the breadth. This gives a little highlights into some of the depth. And then there's obviously stuff that never makes it onto here that is a lot of time involved, and the depth that is behind the scenes.
So maybe, you know, hearing your comments, listening to your comments, I would guess that perhaps the best place to put that is on your Facebook page. And also I can, in the monthly mayor's notes, I can put a package together so it isn't, so people know, but it isn't frightening. I mean, there's a balance there.
And I think, you know, not for it to be frightening, but when I talk to people, even many older people my age, who have lived out here for a long time, it's like, oh, I always leave my back door open at night so the dog can come in and out. And it's like, how much is erring on the side of scaring people, and how much is letting people know that it's not the community it necessarily was 60 years ago? And when you look at this, it's like, oh, maybe I won't leave my back door open.
Well, you know, let's talk about this offline and sort of see what we can come up with for some ideas. And I look to all of you as counselors. You have some thoughts about, you know, safety measures or how much to publicize and the best way to do it. I'm very interested in that. But I don't want to take a lot of meeting time to
When
work that.
we're discussing, you know, general fund and service levels, obviously the service level aspect of this is definitely part of budgets. It's definitely part of our, you know, our general fund, you know, conversations for revenues and all of that, which is a similar but a slightly different use of the data as well. So just to throw that out there.
Just to add to that, you know, I think it probably goes without saying, but just to reminding ourselves and people we talk to that, of course, Coburg has a police department, and having a police department in and of itself creates a safer community and deters crime in a certain regard. So when people say, well, nothing ever happens here,
Maybe
in part that's because we have police and public safety.
Yeah.
So
It does, but
so things do happen,
Mhm.
but they're taken care of well, and also we have some deterrence by having a police department. Thank you for
Yeah.
being here.
Councilor Lyman.
I think I've been on council 5 or 6 years now, and the FTE of our reserve officers has fluctuated quite a bit. What's the current level, and how has our recruitment been for increasing our reserve officers?
I can speak to that. Currently, obviously, as you folks know, we're down 1.5 FTEs currently. So it's myself, Officer Wilson, and the chief who's usually busy doing admin things. So generally, the week is split up between myself and one other officer. If we're not here, we're on call. We're going back and forth all the time.
In terms of the reserve officers?
So as far as the reserve officers go, we have 6 reserve officers currently, 2 of which are solo, which means they can pull a shift just like anyone else. That is getting ready to increase. We've got some folks coming through the pipeline that have gone through some training recently that are giving them the ability to do that. We have talked about, I don't know that we have actually pulled the trigger on it, but we have some people that turn in applications and are interested in the reserve program who are prior officers elsewhere, which we could throw right into the mix, which would be a very welcome asset to have. So I think that's just kind of a point of getting everybody coordinated together and getting that done.
And how long typically does a reserve officer serve?
That varies greatly. It depends on what that officer wants to, are you for shift or just in
No,
terms of?
longevity.
Staying with us, yeah.
So we have reserve officers that have been officers longer than I have. But they don't want to be full-time officers. Other ones, they use this as kind of a gateway to get into law enforcement. That's kind of the way that traditionally it's been geared towards. Currently, we have a couple people that are kind of trying it out to see if they want to expand into a career in law enforcement. Andrea Senega has been a reserve officer for about 18 years now. She's one of the solo reserve officers, and Erica Reed has recently came back as a reserve officer. She was a reserve officer here many years ago and then was a reserve officer in Junction City. So she has about 18 years as well. I myself became a police officer through the pipeline as being a reserve officer for the city of Oak Ridge. So it's a huge asset.
I think from a, operational capacity to kind of manage a reserve program, probably 8 to 12 is probably a number, a range of that roster that would make sense. And we got to the low end here recently, just, like Sergeant says, just from people's life choices and what's going on. It wasn't an intention and wasn't any problems either. So yeah, there's a buildup kind of back, and it's always a opportunistic kind of a thing. But I think that 8 to 12 range is you get past a dozen, you have to really get structured. I think we could do it. We would have to really make a conscious decision, and it would also have some different budget implications. It needs vehicles, it needs computers, it needs equipment, it needs hardware, it needs stuff, and it needs a little more training and that kind of stuff. So it feels to be our sweet spot is 8 to 12, and the team is working on kind of getting it closer to that 10 to 12 range, coming back up.
And to piggyback up off that, the big problem agencies are having right now is for recruitment is we're asking you to go put your life on the line, but we're not going to pay you. And you're probably going to have to buy all your own stuff. And currently it's hard to find a program to put anybody through to become a reserve officer because they have to go through an academy. Lane County has recently shut their doors. That's been what we've used in the past. The last person we put through is the Mid-Valley Reserve Academy, which is in Salem. They have to go back and forth to Salem on their own. It's their own time, usually 3 days a week, up to about 12 hours per week. Well, no, that's actually low, about 20 hours a week. In addition to their own regular job, these folks are holding, their own jobs. So to ask them to do that it's hard to do, especially to get people that are willing to do it. So we're fortunate to have the folks that we have. We're beyond fortunate to have the folks that we have. They're great, and the city's better because of it. Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned reserve officers and how long they stay. What's the average, I don't know, per week, whatever, hours that you have reserves that are working?
So currently, we have, it's actually fairly low. Andy Senega is helping us a lot with our Harrisburg hours. So she's usually putting in, I would say, 5 to 8 hours per week. The other guys are doing a lot of training right now. So there's not as many hours, but I would say on average 3 to 4 hours per week to average out 10 to 15 per month-ish
And that's as a total group
per person.
per
Yes,
person.
ma'am.
So, yeah, 60 to 80 hours a month.
Yeah, I would say.
Of reserve in various things.
Right.
Some reserves actually help with training. I think we have somebody certified that can lead some of our required trainings. So it's a whole kind of, mixed bag of benefit, right? Some of it's external to the community, some of it's internal to the workings of the department. There's some administrative work that some of the reserves can help with, and IT work that can come about. So it's an asset internally and externally.
Well, and just, that was why I was wondering, because if 3 paid officers are generating 80 hours worth of volunteer officers, that's a real hidden asset
Oh,
to the community.
Yeah, and as I say, you get past a dozen and it gets hard for 3
Right,
to manage
But the
that
fact
asset.
that
But yeah,
we have as many as we do and they spend as much time as they do, that's pretty impressive.
I think that speaks very well to our officers, officers,
Yep.
that we have that many. And they're committed and
Over-
longevity.
Over historically in the Lane County area is kind of known as a hub for reserve officers, and it was almost instrumental statewide in implementing that program. So the traditions carried over, and the definitely the word is out. If we have folks approaching us a lot, and we just don't have the capacity to train them, is what it is.
and that's not necessarily just an us thing. That
No,
requires
yeah,
those
absolutely.
agencies
Yeah.
to be able to train. Yeah,
Closing of the training sites.
right,
Right.
exactly.
Closing, but closing to outside.
Mhm.
Which is, similar to we've talked about for water and wastewater. Those training certification programs are at risk, and we're really subject to required certifications in a lot of the work we do across the city. So that is a challenge. Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else? Officer? Sergeant, sorry.
The financials, I don't have anything of note. Things are, starting the year pretty normal. We're 2 months in, so there's nothing really wowing to look at other than some, possible abnormalities because of when we pay annual things at the beginning of the year and when, revenues come in. We'll be coming soon with property tax revenues. That's, that looks really dire until November, December, then it starts to look right. So not much there. On the administration report, there's a couple things I wanted to hit on. Mostly, well, all good news stuff. The housing capacity analysis that we talked about in July for that application, we got it. LCOG is leading the way there. Crestwell dropped out, so it's Coburg and Cottage Grove. They chose, Crestwell chose not to continue on. The details are being worked out between LCOG and the grant funders, DLCD, but that's great stuff. And Megan, again, is working heavy on that one, and we're going to get some really good stuff out of that buildable lands inventory, housing needs assessment, and then possibly some code suggestions if there are any barriers. I don't foresee that. As we talked about earlier, I think our code is in really good shape to leverage good, smart urban housing development. So that's a good thing. We'll get you the final information when it's there, but we definitely did get the award, and really appreciate Jake and team at LCOG for leading that. That's going to be really useful for us. And then the next step to really help us on that UGB conversation after that. We also have we were included in a 6-city project for a community disaster resilience planning grant. This one's a little bit different than the housing capacity one. We'll be very involved. Megan will be, when I say we, Megan will be very involved in the housing capacity grant and in pulling together a lot of work, and hopefully we may end up with some reimbursement for that. That's a maybe. This community disaster resilience planning grant, Megan is again coordinating this one for us, so her plate's full. A little bit less work for us. It's more the Institute, U of O's Institute for Policy Research Engagement, IPRI. And we've already kicked off the first stakeholder meeting. Basically, it's to map and develop a plan for heritage resources in Coburg. And heritage resources, typically buildings, but it's not just buildings. It can be other things. And this is paid grant funded through FEMA's hazard mitigation grant program. So it's, I think, really great. And we've got some great stakeholders that are going to be involved in that as we go. Building owners, the Grange, IOF building, and then our Heritage Committee will be coordinating on that one as well. So that's a cool one that sort of landed in our lap. I think another community dropped out and they had 5 of the 6 and they wanted us. That's, I think, because we're known by the U of O team, that program, and just worked in our favor. The final one's another one that's very similar to that, U of O Real World, and that's the same undergraduate program that's related to it falls under the IPRI. And this one's a little bit smaller in scope because it's an undergrad class. They did that community survey for us last year. This is a different cohort, and it's kind of broken into 2 terms and really focusing on the loop path. So I think it's really timely, looking at the 2009 loop path implementation plan, updating that, reviewing it for what has been built since then. What are the concept maps of those future potential pathways? Do they still make sense? Are there any issues with that? And then getting some involvement of the Park and Tree Committee on a input there. So I think it'll be really fun for Park and Tree to relook at that. Many of those members have been very involved in that original loop path. So that's going to be a fun one to update. And it really coincides well with the section that's being completed here the next month. If you haven't seen it, out on North Industrial, the section from the end of Sarah Lane out to Trails End. You probably can't walk it all the way yet. It's probably still cordoned off with construction fencing, but it's getting close. It's getting close to being completed. They're paving. They were going to pave. The rain messed up last Sunday night, so they're going to do an overnight pave, but I think it's going to be this coming Sunday for paving that road. And the final one of the good news is we, day 2 of our accountant, we had a recruitment period for the accountant position. We reformatted that from finance director to an accountant, and Carissa started yesterday and spent today with our finance consultant and really went into all the details. And of course, there's all these first few weeks things of getting her login credentials to the PERS stuff and to the banking. And there's a lot of setup to get going, but she's a quick study and we're really excited to have her on board. And I'm not the accounts payable and payroll guy anymore as of yesterday.
Definitely very pleased about that.
Yeah, really. Yeah, everybody should be. Yeah,
I think everybody got paid.
Oh, I'd know if they did. Yeah. The rest of it is the regular monthly stats. And then I did put at the end of that, there's a little flyer about the Community Disaster Resilience Planning Grant. Gives a little more information about that project. That's it for administrative reports.
Can we go back and I ask a question on the balances, the first page of
Yeah.
the City of Coburg balances?
Mhm.
So the general fund is down by 110,000.
On the cash. Yep.
And that's what we were expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Property tax related.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It
That's
ends
what
up.
I was making that assumption, but I don't like to make assumptions.
Yeah, it's not its own bank account, so we're not negative in the bank. We're
Right.
just, we're temporarily underwater on that fund and from a cash flow. But yes, that we use fund balance and it covers itself in November, December. The $900 to $1 million rolls in for property taxes. It takes care of about half the general fund.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just had to confirm.
Yep, that number stands out on the report.
I'm expecting those property tax
bills any day now.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So I know a while back, our street sweeper was broken. Is it been repaired? and back in
Yes.
Service?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Haven't seen it around very much.
That is correct. We need drivers for it. Yeah, we've been, it's coming back around in advance of the leaf pickup program. We'll be doing some Thursdays. We literally did have short staffing with people out. We have another leave and just vacations and stuff. So we've been short. So typically, as I think I've said before, on the, what ends up getting shorted when we're not fully staffed is the non-regulatory items. The regulatory stuff gets done, and the other stuff gets the cycle gets longer. But I've fielded a couple calls from residents about that, asking that similar question, and that will be back in service here and heavy. And it really, by design, its hiatus typically is mostly in the summer. That is the street sweeper. Is in a minor way aesthetics. It's primarily for street, surface safety and primarily for storm drainage. So this is the time of year where it really gets used more often. About 3 weeks ago, Lane County came through, and in addition to their regular street sweeping they do for North Willamette and Pearl, they also vacked out all of the storm drain basins. I don't know if anybody saw them, but they ripped through and got all those basins. So their system is all the way cleaned out for the season. And the parts of our system that aren't infiltration go into that county system and then exit out. So they were here about a month ago.
Other questions, comments? Moving on, do we have any counselor liaison updates or counselor comments? Yes, counselor.
Well, so I'm going to be out of town during our next regular council meeting, November 12th. I'm going to be out of the country, so I probably won't be able to join you. Yeah, thank you. The reason I mention that is I know we have our second public hearing on the amendments to the zoning code. And I just, for what it's worth, I want to let my fellow counselors know I'm fully supportive of it. If I were here, I would vote yes to enact those. I think those are sensible revisions. So just, just throwing that out there. And then the other thing, somebody mentioned to me the other day that what our country really needs is for people from different perspectives and viewpoints and political parties to do more social things together in a civil manner. We need our civility back. And I was reminded that in Coburg, a few years ago, there was the visioning process where community members were invited to come together and talk about their vision for the community. And one of the cool things that came out of that were a lot of new community organizations like the Coburg Choir, and there's an art group. I apologize, I don't remember what they're called. Some of the energy around Coburg Main Streets, I think, kind of bubbled up from that. And so it just made me happy and proud and, happy for Coburg that we have some community groups that are, for anybody. It doesn't matter what church you go to or what your opinions are. We can come together and make friends with people from all walks of life. And so I would encourage counselors to remind people that those organizations are out there. They're not necessarily associated directly with the city at all. That's not the point. They're just organizations in our community. There's also the Coburg Community Foundation. I would recommend, anybody that happens to listen, if there's somebody there listening, look into joining one of those organizations. You're going to meet people around town, and I think it's been really great for Coburg. And so I'm just happy to be here and happy that we live in a community where we have these opportunities.
So when's the party at your house?
Well, we have all of the fall opportunities coming up through Main Street. There's I think the 26th is the pumpkin run walk, and then there's sip and shop on that same day. I don't know if I got that terminology correct. And then there's there's the scarecrows that are all over town. And then we have the fall gathering in the park. Yeah. And then we move right from that, we move into the Christmas season, the holiday season. So there are lots of opportunities, and I too am very, very happy to live in Coburg and very happy to be included in many of the groups. You know, nobody talks politics or religion or, I mean, I have no idea what everybody's persuasion in all of those different aspects are. But we can still be friends. We don't always have to agree on everything, nor is it really that important. Thank you for that.
And I do
Member
have
Smith.
a Parks liaison update, but to piggyback on what you and Kathy mentioned, we also through Main Streets are starting our community meetings again. And our first one is October 20th, Megan? The 20th at the IOF Hall in the evening. And the whole purpose of this meeting is for people to come, and hopefully most of our organizations will be there to give a small report and some feedback on what they've been doing and how to get involved. Lots coming up. We can use volunteers for all kinds of different events. And so that's there. It's a nice forum where usually everybody that's pretty involved in organizations will also be there. That's our hope. And then just for Parks Committee, we discussed Pavilion Park and wrapping that up. And I spoke with Mr. Hanks, and he said that they'll be bringing more information. We'll be bringing more information to council on the plans for finalizing the grant, and some parks will have a recommendation coming forward regarding that. And then also that we do have a committee vacancy. Lana Meston did resign, so we need it posted that there is a vacancy for Parks Committee. We need another member. And then they had 8 hours of volunteer time in July, and just kind of discussed the maintenance, upkeep, and housekeeping of our parks and open spaces.
Councilor Lehman.
At the planning commission, there was a proposal for improvements to the food truck businesses that will include a building plus food trucks. So we're excited to hear how that's going to progress.
Heritage Committee met last week, and we elected or appointed, I guess, 2 new commissioners to the Heritage. One, I thought there were 2. Did I miss? Okay, all right, okay. All right, Jim Bell was the one who was interviewed, and it went very well, way overqualified for the That's gracious, but yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I thought that myself.
Oh, there's a relation to you.
I didn't know that. Oh, my goodness. What a chance. I was gonna get the
Bell, ring a bell.
Yeah, anyway, it was really interesting. He was grilled about by Ron Spores about his experience and whatever. It was very interesting to listen to it.
I'm sure you've heard more than a few times.
Well, he's sometimes a man of few words.
Not that nice. Ron wasn't let not.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. Anything for you?
For me, it's been a quiet, crazy couple weeks on the personal front, but on the city front, nothing new, which in a way is a good thing.
Nothing from LTD?
No, I probably should send out an end of the year follow-up / let's keep the ball rolling email. That whole project is kind of a longer term vision, I think. So nothing in the interim, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything either. I think you're right. It takes a while to get that ball rolling, the work that they're doing, that committee that they're trying to get filled.
I think it was tough not knowing with what was going to happen with
Yeah.
the transportation package and.
Right.
But I can always send out an end of the year email and say, we're still here.
Good, that's excellent. It's not a city committee, but I will tell you, I have been going to the Coburg, let's see, it's Cave, Coburg Area Emergency Volunteers. And we had 14 people at the last meeting. That grew. I think there were 2 or 3 at the first meeting. So every month when we meet, that gets a little bit more traction. People are interested in terms of what would Coburg do in an emergency? What do we do if with a disaster? One of the big things that we want all people to know is that they need to be 2 weeks ready. And that means you need 2 weeks worth of water, you need 2 weeks worth of food, you need 2 weeks worth of medications, pet food if you have pets, all of those things, because irregardless of what the emergency is, and we've certainly all seen weather-related emergencies. I think we can only think back just a year or so ago and with the ice storm and know that really impacted. Now, we were lucky in Coburg that we didn't lose power. We had some blips, but we didn't lose it for long periods of time, like Thurston and Cresswell, where the storm really came through. But it does impact, and the potential is always there. We always think about, the big earthquake. Well, yes, someday that will come. We don't know when, but we know there will be other emergencies. And it can impact us all. So I will invite you. I think we're meeting again. Do you remember the meeting date? November 8th or 5th. It's a Wednesday, always on Wednesday. See what I think it's the 5th.
That's the day we have that lunch.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
that's fine.
That'd be
It's
the
the
5th.
5th.
Okay.
It's November 5th, Wednesday. Yeah, in the evening, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock? Yeah. 6.
We met at 5:30 last time. I think typically 5:30 or 6, it will go out on Coburg Facebook when the meeting is on I Love Coburg. And it's got, just to say, an amazing trainer who is training us in triage, supplies necessary, FEMA. His name's Jim Bell. I'm sorry, but does an amazing job of just,
Is the meeting?
it's at the IOF Hall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you're welcome to drop in, attend one, attend several, whatever.
It's an interesting group. It's a really good.
Really diverse group of people, different levels, some people will be trained in CERT, some people will choose just to be first aid. But Jim can provide trainings for as trained as people would like to be. But there's also places for people who just want to be neighborhood check-in people that aren't required to save lives as they go. So,
Anything he doesn't do?
no,
He doesn't cook.
I would say not to toot his horn further, but there is a dotted line connection to that. He does volunteer, and assist me with emergency management work for city operations. So it does have a nice dotted line to the community work that is going on. I think it's working well to not yet have any sort of formal connection between the city's operational emergency management and this group. I think there's definitely areas where it will, the Venn diagram will overlap, and Jim is kind of the common denominator right now to that.
He keeps the volunteers in their place, and that's what the city needs. So, yeah, he's a great resource, and it's a good group.
It is a very good group.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order? If not, I will adjourn this meeting at 7:44. Thank you.